The LG Procast, the podcast, is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only. The views or opinions expressed by the podcast hosts and guests do not necessarily reflect the official position of LG. For the latest and most accurate information about LG products, please consult relevant product manuals and related documentation. The information provided in this podcast episode is for informational purposes only and does not constitute professional advice. While we strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information, we make no representation or warranties of any kind, express or implied, about the completeness, accuracy, reliability, or suitability of the information for any specific application in the following discussion. LG and those posting or otherwise providing information, content, or material are not responsible or liable for any consequences relating directly or indirectly to any action or inaction you take based on the information, content, or other material on the podcast.
Welcome to the LG Procast. I'm your host, Terry Fracinda, joined by Phillip Craigbaum. Phillip, hey, man.
Terry, how are you?
Great. What we're going to talk about today?
So while we're prepping for the episode, somebody called us dual fools. We're going to talk about dual fuel.
So where are we?
We are at the LG Service Champions Summit 2025 in Alpharetta. So we've got all of the service champions, formerly known as TSAs, from all over the country, a couple hundred of them, men and women here, who are the backbone of the support teams for all of our distribution and applied rep partners. So they're here getting educated and learning stuff too.
Great. I got to tell you, I brought the guys that work with me on our team in for this meeting as well, because I think it was important that we gather and grab as much of this learning as we can so that we're a resource for these folks as well. So cool. What are we going to talk about today, buddy?
So let's talk about dual fuel.
Dual fuel?
Yeah, man.
Come on, man.
That's fun.
What is dual fuel?
So dual fuel is pairing together a heat pump with a second, typically a fossil fuel. Could be natural gas, propane, oil furnace, some other fuel source as the secondary heat source.
Why would a premier heat pump manufacturer like LG want to get in the dual fuel business?
That's a good question. So there's a lot of market that is a lot of different reasons. So there's markets where people just love their gas furnace, and that's what they're going to be on, and that's what they've always had. And, you know, frankly, we've tried to get heat pumps into some of these markets, and they don't want to commit to that. You know, maybe it was they had a bad experience or they heard bad rumors about heat pumps, and, you know, typically that's Gen 1 heat pumps. And then there's also parts of our country where dual fuel makes a whole lot of sense because it gets really, really cold. And while we can do it with a cold climate heat pump, it may mean that we have to size that heat pump so far for heating that we're grossly oversized on the cooling side. And so, you know, lots of different reasons that it makes sense to actually take both of the technologies, use the best part of both, and put them together. You know, operation costs too.
So that's what I was wondering. So if I have a dual fuel system, I mean, I basically am making the best of both technologies. I mean, I could use a furnace to make heat. I could use the heat pump to make heat. I hear or see redundancy.
Mm-hmm.
If my furnace were to fail, I would have backup heat from a heat pump. If the heat pump were to fail, I would have backup heat from my furnace.
Right.
That's an interesting strategy. So
yeah, and so, you know, going back to the operating cost and the best of both worlds, so there's two different balance points that we look at. We look at the thermal balance point, which is the point in which the heat pump can no longer produce enough heat to satisfy the load of the house. But then there's also an economic balance point. The economic balance point is where we look at the cost of the fuel, the cost of the electricity, the efficiency of the furnace, the efficiency of the heat pump. And there's typically a point where the colder it gets, we have to spin the compressor so fast that we're burning so much electricity that there is a point where the dual fuel, when you switch over to potentially natural gas, would be more cost effective. And so for those markets that get really cold, do a little bit of math and we figure out, hey, at, 16 degrees outside, it becomes more economical for me to shut the compressor off and to fire up my natural gas 96% efficient furnace or something like that. And so it makes sense for those people to have the ability to flip over.
Well, I mean, if I think about the old saying, hey man, I'm cooking with gas. I mean, there's a large portion of our country, and I basically would say, east or west of the Mississippi River and east of the Colorado Rockies, where gas is certainly the predominant heating source, not only for heating but for cooking.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There's just big. I mean, those markets have traditionally been gas furnaces, and those, by the way, are also the most reluctant markets to give a heat pump a fair shake.
Well,
right.
yeah, I mean, I lived in Lafayette, Louisiana for a while, which is a huge oil and gas town, and tried to sell some heat pumps around there. And there were some people that were like, you want me to get off of the fuel that supports my family? Like my husband's an oil worker. They don't want to get off that.
Well, I understand. I mean, I understand that, but so I'm thinking, if I go back to just the economic portion, okay, at some point, maybe I'm in a market where gas is more expensive than electricity, and that's a choice I
Rates
use.
changed.
Right? Rates change, right? Or maybe I'm in a market where electricity is less expensive than gas, which gives me the option, which is always a good thing for a homeowner, right, or a consumer, an option in the way they spend their dollars for heating or cooling.
I literally had that conversation with a gentleman this morning from New York, Joe. He was talking about, he's in upstate New York. He said their natural gas prices haven't changed much, but they've had, in the last 3 years, their electricity has gone up 100% each year. So that would make you, so that economic balance point is now changing currently more favorably towards the natural gas. And then you get certain markets where, for whatever reason, sometimes they're trying to push people towards electricity. So who knows what things are going to look like in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. I mean, policies change. Just the public sentiment tends to change a little bit. So
Well, that goes back to my option. Yeah, that option comment, right? That's exactly where that comes in, and not locking me out or locking me in to a set way. I mean, we wholeheartedly. I mean, if you listen to our podcast at all, we wholeheartedly talk about cold climate heat pump. That hasn't changed. Okay, that hasn't changed at all. What we're doing is giving you these options as builders, as consumers, as contractors and distributors to help you sell more products, to help you install more products. And certainly putting a high performing heat pump in with a coil or a gas furnace, a matchup is a good deal. So talk to me about this product a little bit, Phillip.
yeah, I want to mention one other thing before we move on. Dual fuel is not really a new.
No, it's not.
It's been around for a while, but it's had the same bad rap that heat pumps have had for a while, is that a lot of people don't care for their dual fuel because they don't like their heat pump. An old single stage heat pump that we've had for, we talked about
The
it
legacy.
different times, the struggles that they have. And a lot of times that's the discomfort of the discharge temps. And so when they're running on the heat pump, they're getting that 90-degree warm air that's not real comfortable. Your body's 98 degrees and
Right.
you got 90-degree air. It feels cold to your body. And so they don't enjoy it that much. Well, now we've got a high performance heat pump that's just charging 120, 125, 130-degree air. And so they're getting those discharge temps, warm air coming out of the registers that's just very similar to their gas furnace. And so that's one of those big obstacles that we've overcome. So I just wanted to throw that
And
out.
again, why is LG your premier heat pump manufacturer? Well, you've heard some of the reasons why. We still can and we still will sell, promote, and do, high performance heat pumps in those markets. But
Yes.
you just can't ignore a large segment, right? You have to do this or you have to do that, and may or may not make good economic sense or may not even make common sense. But
I was talking to Joe, who lives upstate New York. Evidently New York in 2030 is they're done with gas. Everything has to go electric. So, that doesn't necessarily move into the dual fuel, but it's one thing that I wanted to talk about is, so if somebody has gas fuel today, they're on a natural gas or propane furnace, like what are the options that LG offers them? Because we have several different options that we can provide for a retrofit for somebody like that. So if you're a contractor in one of those markets where you are being forced to, or you're choosing to move more towards the
or incentivized.
option or incentivized, what are the options that LG has for you? And we have several now.
So case coil, gas
So
furnace.
we have a gas furnace, so dual fuel.
Dual
And that
fuel.
actually comes in 2 different flavors.
Okay.
So we make a cased coil that you can put on anybody's furnace, any
Okay.
third-party
That's an LG produced product.
Yep. So we have the coil and we have the outdoor unit, and you're going to put any furnace that you want with it.
Okay.
And then we now also have an LG produced furnace. So it'll be an LG coil furnace and outdoor unit. The big benefit to that comes in the form of the AHRI rating. So when we get the ratings with third-party furnace, we're forced to match up with the least efficient of the furnaces that are out there. And that's where our SEER number and all those other things come in. Well, when we match with the LG furnace, now we're pushing a high efficiency blower and we're showing 18.2 SEER. So it really shows what the equipment can actually do. So we have both of those options where we're taking somebody from a natural gas, probably with an air conditioner outside, and we're moving them to a dual fuel system. So they kind of get the benefits of both of those worlds. And then we also have the ability to transition them to all electricity with our high performance heat pumps. And there's a couple of different flavors there, depending on the climate and what they need and electric capabilities of the home. But a lot of these homes that have gas furnaces, particularly older homes, have smaller electrical panels. Maybe they only have 100 amp service to the home. And in order to go heat pump, they would have to put in a higher amperage electrical service
upgrade.
Home. Well, with an LG system, we can potentially go in there with one of our cold climate models or something like that, the red. The electric air handler pulls all of its power from the outdoor unit, just like a mini split would.
Correct.
And so we're going to take the condenser power that's already existing. That's going to power the condenser.
The new heat
also going to power the air handler. So now we can retrofit these homes in ways that don't require them to do that electrical service upgrade and transition over to an all-electric home.
Certainly an option there. That's an interesting thought and strategy. You bring. I hate to keep using the word options, but I mean, that's exactly what we're bringing to this industry and to this trade is, I've said it on previous Procast podcasts. I'm like, man, you just do not have to accept the way it's always been done. There are better ways to heat and cool in our country, and we're beginning to show and demonstrate to the public and to the builder trade and to the contractor trade those options that exist out there in the market for them.
Yeah, and why do we need so many options? And part of it is because our country is massive and we have different climates and we have different policies and, all sorts of different things. But Florida and North Dakota certainly don't need the same pieces of equipment. That's a whole different world. So why do we have so many options? Because there's such a vast difference to our country.
You spoke briefly about, if one of the problems that you and I run into when we're applying and designing products around the country and the guys in the distribution channels as well, is if I'm sizing for primary heat in a cold market like a North Dakota, to meet that heating requirement, to meet that heating load without using electric heat, if it's possible in that climate, depends on where I'm at, but without using electric heat, then I'm more than likely grossly oversized for the cooling load. Dual fuel allows me to more properly size the cooling side of the equation and still provide the heating need and output and I may be able to run the heat pump in the shoulder seasons and carry the load, but then get deep into, December, January, February, and on comes my gas furnace.
When you really want to get down to the book, like a lot of these colder climates go cold climate heat pump, they're either doing one of two things. They're oversizing the system on cooling, which is not proper, and it does not meet manual S requirements. And I've heard of some guys that are doing the right thing, and they're putting in two systems in the home, one to run for summer and then both to run for heating because they have such high heating loads. And I'm like, well, that's super costly.
Yeah, super costly.
But that's one option.
At least that's a better option than grossly oversizing.
Right. Or they're putting in electric heat strips to make up that difference, which in a lot of cases can work.
Makes sense.
So again, options, what do you need for your market? And that's not the same everywhere. What does my climate look like? What do my loads typically look like? What product should I be selling? And that's a conversation that I have with a lot of contractors. They open up our catalog and I'm like, okay, hang on. What makes sense? And let's narrow that down. So what makes sense in your climate?
All right, so dual fuel. It's making the most of both technologies.
Yeah.
Dual fuels, providing options for builders, contractors, homeowners, developers, designers. Dual fuel, solving sizing issues in cold climate heat pumps right? So I hear a lot of
The LG
positive.
furnace that's coming out, I do want to say this. So we've launched our case coil several months ago, and we're currently in the middle of launching the furnace. And there's going to be two versions of the furnace. We're going to have an 80% single stage furnace, and then we're going to have a 96%, and it'll have a two-stage gas.
Two-stage gas?
Yep.
And then that's a PVC vented system
Yeah.
as well?
Yep.
All right, so,
Yep.
all right.
And they all have multi-speed ECM blower motors in them, so you'll be able to adjust your
So
blowers.
even the 80 plus will have an
Yes.
ECM blower motor. That's big news.
They are non-communicating systems. So side note, if you're using either the LG furnace or the third-party furnace, you're going to use a 24-volt thermostat to run that system.
Okay.
And then we'll wire it in, and then the outdoor unit essentially wires up like a standard heat pump. So it has your Y and your R and
Okay.
your O and all those terminals on the outdoor unit with the communications kit built in. So it'll be a non-communicating system. However, by measuring the temperatures and the pressures and the outdoor temperature and using all those things, they can still maintain a constant temperature of the indoor coil and still be able to ramp that compressor up and down. So we're not losing that.
Got you. Not losing that inverter operation.
No, originally when I heard it, I thought, well, we'll lose most of it. And I've seen some data from some of our guys recently, and it's pretty impressive how smart these systems have gotten. And you lose very, very little of the performance when you do that.
I can tell you from the first 4-hour session I was in this morning, there's some really smart men and women sitting in these classes.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Hey, the message, if you're listening or watching this podcast, the message is there's a couple hundred people in here doing what? Committing time, money, and resources to make this product easier to service and sell and install. And that's a huge win for all of us.
Yeah, it's big. So, Terry, I think we've covered most of it, unless you had something you wanted to add.
No, I'm excited that we have 2 more days here at this event with these folks. And, it's a pleasure. For me, one of the benefits of an event like this is the out of the meeting conversations and the sharing, knowledge sharing that goes on among peers in an industry. And I know that they're working and have a forum created that they can share and bounce ideas off of. So that kind of stuff's exciting for me. But listen, man, that's LG. That's us moving forward at a rapid pace, not sitting still, but getting up and going to work and doing the right thing, and that's powerful.
Yeah, and relationships. These guys are TSAs or service champions throughout the country, and getting to meet each other. And I've introduced a few of them that I've known from different markets. Hey, here's Billy from Tennessee. I want to introduce you to Joe from New York and Dave from North Carolina. Like, these are guys who are in the same trenches as you are. And
Right.
so they build these relationships in these little communities, and they actually support each other.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So just that community, that relationship, like you talked about, the forum that we've built for these guys to be able to communicate with each other has been super, super beneficial. Well, Terry, anything else you want to hit before we go?
No, Phillip, I think dual fuel certainly has been in our, thought process for a while. I'm glad that we've taken that leap of faith, and I'm glad that we, typical of LG, have committed the resources and the technology to build a superior product. And
It's exciting, right? We're continuing to expand the portfolio of products that LG offers, and this is one more very large step that we're making to continuing that expansion. I mean, we have the commitment from our leadership that we're going to have a full portfolio of equipment. Moving into that dual fuel, that gas furnace market is a huge
step in the right direction.
Yeah,
So, well,
I'm excited.
super. So from the LG Procast here in Alpharetta, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. See you on the next side.
See ya.